Hey friends. Well, I'm still sort of riding the wave of the book that I finished a day or two ago. I'm still kind of riding that wave into shore. I've actually, the last day or two, I haven't been listening to anything. I've kind of deliberately, even when I've had time in the morning or whenever to turn on an audiobook, I've sort of deliberately not, so that I can let this one settle in a little bit and I can let my thought cycles complete before I go and pick up a new dose of information and ideas. And the thing that I sort of wanted to really put some focus on, which is emphasized by the authors at the end of the book. There's this really beautiful moment where they say, and if you have not caught my last several posts, I'm talking about a book. It's called Erzählende Affen. It's by two German authors. It's in German. I don't know that there's an English edition available right now, although hopefully it'll be translated sometime soon. And it's about how stories are the template, the substrate of all of our human meaning making, and they pay particular attention to the hero's journey, because the hero's journey is not only incredibly prevalent in the stories that we tell for entertainment and for our enjoyment, and have told for our entertainment and enjoyment for millennia, but it's also a very relevant and kind of active meaning arc or architectural blueprint for meaning in all of our different realms of life. So in other words, we are going to be seeking out a hero's journey type narrative wherever we look. It's just kind of hardwired into us. So in our political arena, we're going to be looking for that. In our social, domestic arena, we might be looking for that. We will be looking for that. So anyway, what they emphasize towards the end of this book is, they say we were trying to figure out if there's a form of the hero's journey or a particular rendition of that story that would actually be helpful in empowering us to address the problems of today. And I've already spoken in some previous posts about how there's more than one kind of hero's journey, and there's actually kind of a masculine and a feminine version of these stories, and they emphasize different aspects of the journey, and they emphasize different forms of transcendence, different forms of evolution, different forms of ultimately victory for the hero or heroes. So, but at the end they're talking about this, and they're going, we were searching and searching, and eventually we realized that we might have been doing something wrong, that we realized why we weren't finding what we were looking for. And there's this moment where they said, we've been continually casting humanity in the role of the protagonist. And what if humanity up till now hasn't been playing that role? They do this beautiful description of like Thanos in the Avengers movies, who is basically kind of ultimate antagonist, the ultimate villain. He wants to wipe out half of all life in the universe because, according to him, the universe is overpopulated. And the only way to make it more sustainable and more livable is to wipe out half, or I forget, more than half, whatever it is, by snapping his fingers and destroying all this life. And there's this moment at the end of that movie, at the very end, after in the first movie where he kind of seems to have won, he actually accomplishes this. But then, of course, there's time travel and there's back and forth. It's an Avengers movie, so it goes, down a million wormholes. And but at the end of the process, right before he's about to die, he kind of realizes that he's the antagonist. And whereas he's been on this mission to change the world in the way that he thinks is right, he suddenly has to reckon with the fact that, oh no, what if I'm the bad guy? What if I'm the antagonist here? What if I'm not the hero? He's been seeing himself in a hero's journey that whole time. And all of a sudden it gets reframed. And this is what the authors are saying we ought to do with our own perspective. We ought to do with our own perception of what our role is. Because what if, we are the only species on this planet that has the power of narrative. We're the only species that tells stories. And therefore, we're the only species that has the power to envision the world being different than it is and to work towards that, to manifest our vision of a world that we may have never even seen, but only imagined. That's an incredible, you can't even describe how powerful or how significant that gift is, that gift of consciousness, or that attribute of consciousness, of human consciousness is. It's mystical. It's absolutely a miracle. And what if we haven't been using that power the way we're supposed to? That's a scary thought. It's kind of like when I was listening to the book, the image, the cinematic image that came to me is like the end of an M. Night Shyamalan movie, where the premises of the story, like he does a really good job of like setting you on a journey where and installing certain premises that you, because of the way the story is being told, you assume certain premises are true. And then at the end of the story, that gets flipped, and we realize, we, along with usually the protagonist in the movie, realize the foundational premise of my entire journey is false. I'm not a live person helping another live person deal with the fact that they see dead people. I'm a dead person, thinking that I'm helping this live person because they're one of the few people that can see me, but I've been unaware for the duration of this movie that I'm actually dead, right? I'll let you if you haven't seen that movie, go watch a bunch of M. Night Shyamalan movies. I don't want to ruin it for you, although I kind of just did. But that's the kind of flip that I experienced in this way of turning our perspective on the hero's journey on its head. It's like the ultimate reframe to see, and there are other archetypes like this, like the Darth Vader, the Anakin Skywalker character in Star Wars, is arguably the most enduring protagonist in that story, because over the course of 6 movies, however many books, he goes from being a young, talented Jedi, growing up and getting older and older, and then having a couple of key events happen, and his own inner tensions within himself. He turns to the dark side, becomes a force for evil for a good portion of the story, and then has a kind of like a recognition of that at the end, and turns back towards the light. So in other words, we do have long form stories, and even probably some short form stories that I'm not thinking of, where that is the hero's journey. The hero's journey involves a period of time when the hero is not strictly a force for good. We become a force for ill. What if that's what's happened to us? What if that's what we need to come out of? That's a big thing to accept. That's a big thing to even try to imagine, because how can we see ourselves that way? How can I see myself as the equivalent of a Darth Vader, whose actions and who's operating under the assumption that my effort is towards achieving something good and wholesome and beneficial for humanity, and actually it's not. I'm not convinced that that's necessarily true of every human, obviously, but I think it's worth looking at. It's very illuminating to put that possibility on the table and start asking the question, what are we really working for? And where in ourself are we coming from as we go through our daily life, as we make contributions to the world? Sadhguru is the first one to tell you, if you haven't cleared up the darkness in yourself, if you haven't cleared up the compulsiveness within yourself, then the effect that you will have on the world will be chaotic. You will increase chaos in the world, which is to say, you'll increase entropy, you'll increase the forces that are tearing society, the environment, the world apart. So what I felt in this sort of the end of this book was a reference to that spiritual reality made very concrete in the form of our narrative architecture of meaning. But when you put it in those terms, and when you start just the image of the great villains of our stories is a powerful one to sort of wake us up and say, whoa, if the effect that I'm having is not so much like this hero over here that I think that I resonate with, but more like this arch villain over here, what does that mean? How can I deal with that? What should I do about that? It opens some really pregnant questions and really kind of just, points the mirror at us in a way that doesn't pull punches. So it really feels a little bit like the ultimate reframe at the end of this investigation of narrative. So yeah, it's a twist, plot twist. But I'm gonna sit with that and kind of see where if that evokes anything in me. Thanks for watching, folks. Appreciate you. Much love. See you soon.